Dear church, let's talk about hope in hard times. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. I'm your host, Chris McCurley. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have a special guest today, Anna Beth McCoy, who is a good friend of mine, also one of our members at Oldham Lane, and someone who has a really good story. A story that maybe didn't have a lot of good points in it, but one that is a story of hope and one that I'm so glad that you came on to share with us today. So before we jump into kind of what you've been through over the last few years, tell us a little bit about you. Let our audience know something about you and your family.
I born and raised in Texas, in Grandview, Texas, raised in the church, with just a really great family. And ended up going to Harding University, and which is where I met Jay, my husband, and he's from Abilene. And so my parents actually met here, big circle back to Abilene.
Oh,
so
there you go.
We have 3 kids. Rhett is 7, Mitchell's 5, and Cora's 3. And I stay home with them. So
Yeah.
3 full-time jobs right there.
That's a lot. Yeah, sweet kids. Love your kids.
Thanks.
Love Jay. Jay is a PA for Dr. Cook in town, and that may not mean something to all of our audience, but means a lot to me because my son has had 3 knee surgeries with sports, and Jay has been involved in all of them and helped put him back together. So that has been great. So walk us a little bit through your story. Tell our audience kind of what you've been dealing with over the last, how many years has it been now?
October 2018.
Okay.
Is kind of when everything, I had just had Cora in March, so she was 8 months old.
Okay.
And I had been to the doctor and had some concerns. And so after some tests, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Okay.
And so immediately, it was pretty aggressive. And so immediately, just within the week, I had a port, chemo, just started right away, which I was very thankful for. The medical team here was amazing, and they really got to work and got things going. So after I went through all the chemo, had surgeries and radiation, so that took up most of into 2019.
Yeah.
And then had about a year where we were kind of trying to get back to some kind of a normal. And then I had my scans this past October, which was going to be 1 year post all of my treatment. And they did my scans and said that it spread to my spine,
Okay.
specifically one vertebrae.
Okay.
And so at that point, it's metastatic, and just going on with that. So that's that gets us to October.
And you're continuing treatments right now. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So when you do have cancer spread, it's almost like starting from square one. And so it was the same cancer, just in a different location. So I didn't have to go back to my original treatment. So they changed my meds and just keep watching it. I'm doing scans still, and I do labs and things like that. So right now it's just checking in with doctors and one day at a time. So,
and for now, the medicine is working.
Yeah, my last scans were good, and they showed that spot was good. That the radiation that I had on it worked, and there were no new mets. So I was very thankful for that.
Okay.
But so my next scan is actually coming up, and so just trying to have some peace around that, because you're not super surprised when things spread, but especially because I knew it was aggressive early on, but it was just so fast. So everything happened really fast.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what was that day like? So you said you had some.
Which day?
Well, when you first diagnosed, because you said that you were aware that some things weren't right, and so you go to the doctor, and what's that like to hear that?
Yeah, well, breast cancer runs in my family,
Okay.
so I had been aware of it, but I was I had just turned 30 in August, so I was very young, and nobody in my family was that young. So it was on my radar, but not like, that year. I would have never thought that. And so it was very shocking, obviously, to have like such small ones and get that diagnosis, and thinking, immediately as a mom, your mind goes straight to your kids, your husband, like, how is this going to work?
Right.
Because I had seen people, but from afar.
Right.
So I made some assumptions, but definitely learned a lot going forward.
Yeah. Let me ask you that. What kind of lessons have you learned? How's this affected your faith? How's this impacted, your life as a Christian?
Yeah. Initially, I think because everything happened so fast, there wasn't a ton of waiting time, which if you've ever waited for any kind of a scary test, nobody wants that. So I'm glad I didn't have to just sit and pine about that.
Right.
But it didn't really allow me we just kind of jumped into prayer, and people jumped in our lives to help. And so I think I was pretty laser focused. I cut out a little spot in my closet where I could just post things that people sent me, or scriptures, or different things, where I could just go sit, close the door, sometimes, lock it, and just have some time to pray. So I think initially I was just like, I knew who to turn to. I had that foundation. But after my surgery, they had said, oh, it's in your lymph nodes. So before, I had a biopsy. So I knew at least one of the lymph nodes was positive, which means it had left the initial site. And so, but I had just had all that chemo. And so waking up from that, saying, oh, all 13 of your lymph nodes were positive. That was spiritually, that was just, rock bottom, because I felt like, okay, we've been praying, and I've been, faithful, and things are just supposed to go okay, right? Like, that's kind of the Christian culture is like, be faithful and he's going to take care of you.
Yeah.
And so to wake up to that, and I was just like, oh my goodness, that's not what I expected. And just, I would never say that I felt angry. And I'm not judging anyone who, would have those feelings, but definitely I think disappointment was heavy on my heart. And then I had to, what do I do? How do I deal with that in light of being a Christian?
Yeah.
What I kind of boiled it down to is I didn't know how to bring my grief to God.
Right.
And I've said this before to different people, but it's something you should prepare for, but who want, hey, we're going to have a study on biblical lament. That's kind of a bummer of a topic. Nobody really wants to study that. But when you need those tools, then you're grasping at straws. Right. How do I do this? Is it even, am I a bad Christian if I don't know what to do, or if I'm feeling angry or disappointed? I've had someone ask me that, what I'm dealing with this and I'm struggling. Am I a bad Christian because I can't just walk through this with a smile on my face?
Yeah. But that's a pretty high expectation, isn't it? Because you're dealing with all of these emotions, and like you said, you had this hope through prayer that it was all going to work out. And, your situation is magnified by the fact that you have 3 little ones. Like you said, you're thinking about them and they're growing up. Did you ever reach a point? You said you were at rock bottom at that point, but was that a point where you're like, okay, well, what if? Where's this going to end? What's the long-term prognosis?
Yeah, I think at that point, not really. I think I still was just, I didn't let myself go there at that point.
Yeah.
But I just, I couldn't pray. I had a hard time praying. Yeah. And so I started praying Psalms. I just started praying other people's prayers, people, to try to draw me back in. Yeah. And obviously during all that time, I had other people lifting me up in prayer as well. But I think I was just at a loss of what to do when things didn't kind of turn out at that point the way that I thought they were. And being able to learn how to grieve as a Christian.
Yeah.
And it's something I learned, and it's something I've been able to share to you. So,
Yeah.
but it's just until you're in that situation, you just don't know.
Yeah.
And you can't really prepare 100%
Right. Right.
for that, especially being 30 years old. Like, you just don't think about facing struggles that early. At least I didn't, and that's a naive young person to think like that. But
well, I mean, I think I'm a little bit removed from 30 years old, but I think I probably thought I was invincible. You kind of have this idea in your mind that you live to be a ripe old age, you die in your sleep, and that's how this goes, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's not exactly always the route that it takes. I know your kiddos, smart kiddos, sweet kiddos. What do they know? Do they grasp? I mean, have y'all sat down and talked with them, or
Yeah, they know. I mean, from day one, we just were very open.
Yeah.
Especially when we had definitive answers, and I always answered their questions, which would run into some pretty interesting conversations. But I mean, kids, they can handle hard things, and we don't give them that credit.
Oh, I agree.
And we kind of shut them out, like, oh, this is too adult for you.
Yeah.
And they know when you're not telling them
Right.
the full truth. And so, I mean, they are, we've talked recently about, okay, when talking about God or Jesus saying, I take care of the birds, I take care of the flowers. Mm-hmm. And so, I asked them, what if things don't go the way that we know he's taking care of us, but whenever it doesn't look the way, does that mean he's not taking care of us? And like immediately Mitchell's like, no, because that's from the devil.
Oh, yeah.
And it's true, right?
It
like
is.
every
Yes.
good and perfect thing comes from God. This is not from God.
Right.
He can work through it. And he's the only one who can make this something that can serve him.
Right.
But even a child can, Mom, that's ridiculous. Of course he's taking care of you. God didn't, this is from Satan.
Yeah.
And so just from the mouth of a child, but they ask all the hard questions you could ever imagine. And they just take it in stride.
Yeah.
There's no fear in them. And I've told people, not in a bad way, but like they really don't care. Like your mom, and you have to show up for them every day and take care. Like they're not worried about like, oh, are you not feeling good? Like they don't think about that.
Right.
They're just, their expectations are you to be a mom. So in a way, like that's been a huge blessing. I've not had time to sit too much and sulk and feel sorry for myself because they don't really allow for that. So
yeah, you've said that before, is that you've been able to stay occupied, and I guess that's a positive of having little ones during all this. Is that, like you said, you still got to show up and be mom. What I guess that's got to be one of the more difficult things, is that you're not feeling well the whole time you were going through chemo and treatment and things like that, and you're still trying to be a mom. I know you have a husband that does a great job of helping out and even taking over when he needs to. How difficult was that? Not being able to kind of fulfill those duties always? I mean, I guess you were really worn out and sick. And
yeah, I mean, I would say in the scheme of, people and like how sick that they can, it just changes for every person. And I definitely had some hard days. But I mean, immediately, Jay's family lives here. So I always had people just right here ready to help if I needed anything on a hard day. My mom and sister flew in, and my aunt, and they would come and pretty much live with me and help with just the daily stuff. But I mean, people just poured into our family with helping with everything from food to laundry. A sweet sister, she would come every day or every week and on the same day, and I would have a tote and I would put it outside and she would deliver it fully folded and everything done. And that was her way to bless our family. And it was huge. And as if that wasn't enough, she layered in toys for my kids. So as they were folding their clothes, they had she called it laundry loot. And so, I mean, not even were people just meeting our needs, but they were going above and beyond to make the kids feel excited about laundry day. I mean, it's it really is the little things.
Yeah. Because that's got to be one of the toughest things, is because life still goes on. Your husband still
Right.
has to go to work. You still, take care of kids, and even having a lot of help, you want to be involved. And even if you don't feel well, where are we at today? What is the doctors telling you about treatment, about going forward, about the outlook and all that? I know they're very confident,
Yeah,
and very positive right now.
It's kind of a crazy time. I'm living on this line of 10 years ago, if you heard stage 4 metastatic, it's because things have gotten real bad.
Yeah.
And I'm not downplaying that it's not, but
Was that what they diagnosed you, stage 4?
yeah. So once it is gone beyond lymph nodes, and it's, those are interchangeable. If you hear metastatic or stage 4, those are interchangeable. But so many people are living pretty decent quality of lives compared to 10 years ago. Or
Yep.
I'm just kind of on this bubble of like medical breakthroughs and new meds and new combinations. And so right now I don't have evidence of disease. I just live this line of that's always, a possibility. I try not to Google
Right.
if you get a scary diagnosis, just stay off of Google because you can hear so many things, and that's just not helpful for me or anybody else. But as of right now, it's live your life, take your meds every day, and you just don't know. But I tell people I'm not really any different than you. Like, I have today and you have today.
Yeah, we're all day to day.
Right. And that's it. I know for me, it's more real. The limited days is more real. But that doesn't make it any less true for other people. You can just pretend like you do have a lot of days because nothing's telling you otherwise. Right.
Right.
So just the realization of each day, that's what you got.
Yeah. So overall, how you feel? Like, can you tell the medicine has taken,
Yeah, I mean, I deal with side effects. That's just part of anyone who has a chronic illness. Like, you feel like sometimes the meds make you feel worse than how you felt before.
Right.
But really, I mean, I have energy. I keep up with my kids, and I have very little to complain about. I choose not to dwell on that because that's not helpful for me mentally or anyone around me. I just don't want to. I'm really just cautious about not bringing people down around me. Like, I want people to want to come to me and ask me questions, not feel like it's obviously you felt comfortable asking me, so I want that. I don't want people to feel like there's just a bunch of negativity around me.
Well, and when I asked you, you said that you're in a much better place to talk about this now. I mean, obviously a couple of years ago when it was fresh would be a little bit difficult because you were still trying to sort it out yourself. You just mentioned that, you're trying to make sense of it all because you've been praying for this. You didn't get the best news coming out of surgery and you're like, oh, okay, so this is the way it's going to be. And since then you've grown. And I know we've talked about, unfortunately COVID hit and then, everybody was isolated and you probably would have had to somewhat yourself anyway when you're going through treatment.
Right.
But so we worship from home and all that. And I remember you saying that there was a song that we sang that really got you through. And I love that song. Never Once is the song and a great song. What other things got you through? I'm sure family but what got you through during that time? You said you were kind of at rock bottom at that point.
Right.
So what kind of things did you do to cope at that point?
I did have, I did seek professional help. I did get, because if you're going through anything traumatic on the other side of treatment and everything in that year before my second diagnosis, just trying to figure out I didn't really have time to process everything. It happened so fast. And so when everything slowed down, then it all of a sudden hit you. And so, I'm so thankful for Jay and just how our marriage, struggled. It did struggle. You can't go through something with a spouse and not have some struggle. But just the fight that we had to come on the other side of that. And so being able to have, after I, processed stuff, go into counseling and things, then I felt like I could really lean in on him. I was kind of, you protect people. You don't want to be too much. You don't want to overwhelm them with your emotions. And so I felt like he was just a huge rock of support when I let him be, And we already had a tight group of friends before.
Yeah.
And so having them to just be with us,
Right.
be with my family, be with my kids. And one of my good friends, when everything was happening, she said, I don't know how else to treat you, but like Annabeth, so I'm just going to do that. And if that's ever not working for you, let me know.
Right.
And I mean, that's just, you just don't, especially after surgery and all those kind of things, like you just want people just to be in it with you, but still treat you the same.
Yeah.
And so I think being surrounded by people that were holding up our family in multiple ways, but also just allowing myself to take some time to be pulled into scripture and to see what, because you always hear, oh, bad things happen for a reason or whatever. And I'm not, and what does that really mean? And on the other side of it, I have to have learned something, and I have to be able to share this, and I have to be able to glorify God through this.
Yep.
So setting those goals kind of helped pull me out. Like there is a purpose, and it's not hidden, and it's not a secret.
Right.
And we think there's this combination to our lives, and then once all this clicks, then I have this purpose. Right. But everything that we do has a purpose. And everything we go through, there's a purpose, and he can be glorified, and we have to choose that. And so I think part of it was having a good environment that allowed me to take those baby steps and figure out. I mean, I feel like my biggest breakthrough was reading 1 Peter, talking about hope and the living hope that is in Jesus and the resurrection, and asking myself that hard question, where is your hope?
Yeah.
And where has it been? Because pre-cancer, I had this idea of my relationship with God and who I was. And I'm saying, hey, I belong to him.
Yeah.
So when hit with this adversity, what does that look like? Were you really living that before?
Right.
You start thinking, okay, I could have done better before, but this has to change me. And so identifying like, man, my hope was in my children, was in my husband, and not fully, but partially, in my comfortable life. And so realizing that's not going to get me any closer to God. And it's actually not doing them a favor, because they cannot, they can't carry that burden of hope. Like only Jesus can carry that burden.
That's right.
And once I allowed myself to fully give that to him, to take it away from Jay and the kids, you can't bear that for me. I think that was kind of the big portal to spiritual growth. Yeah. And now I can come to somebody else in pain. Yeah. Because before then I couldn't. Right. I still was figuring. So hope it's hard, right? Like, because you kind of don't want to hope, because if it goes badly. Yeah. Yeah. It all depends on what you're putting your hope in. Yeah. So when I'm putting my hope in, physical things, then it's just up and down, up and down. When it's on the rock, it's funny, not going to be moved. It's funny you bring that up, because I would think that all of this has put some teeth to what you've always been taught growing up, and what, I think there's ideal and real, right? And so this is what I believe. I believe it in the ideal. And this is, you were always a strong Christian ever since I've known you, even before this. But I would think that this puts some teeth to it. It's like, okay, so there's ideal and then there's real. Right. And we operate in the real. And the real is, I've got to take this ideal and now make it more of, we're all day to day, like you said. And our days are numbered, all that kind of stuff. And now I see it in the real, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this? Right. How am I going to take this experience? And you've turned it into a ministry. And I think that's what I really love about you, is that you've taken this and said, how can I use this as a ministry? Not only a tool to help me grow, but also to help others grow. And I think it's been fantastic in how you've used that. And it kind of gives you a purpose too, right? I guess, yeah. And I would say too, I mean, anybody, especially a mother that's staying home, or a dad, or just a parent, when you have kids, like, they can learn and grow to you. Sure. And so I think my initial focus, especially during COVID, whenever, we were in our home so much anyway, was just growing my children, discipling my children, and just starting there and strengthening our family at home. Because if that's strong, then we can do so much more for the Lord.
Right.
And so we were able to kind of use that time to draw our family close to each other and to God, but living that for the kids too, to show them, okay, this is what we're about. And Jesus loved us. This is how we're Jesus to the world. And someone told me one time, like, more people will listen to you when they've seen you go through something.
Yeah.
And not in a haughty way, but just in a way that's like, especially if you're young, cancer, like all these things, it's going to draw people's eye anyway, because it's different and it is scary and it is tragic. And so you already have people looking at you. So you should do something, point to God with it, not yourself, not I did this, but just give that glory to God and pray that he can use you.
Yeah. That's why I wanted you to come on the podcast. So you've said a lot of great things, but is there anything else that you want to say to folks, like any advice or anything that you would, after going through this, maybe, I know there's others that watch this that have maybe gone through something similar or currently going through something like this?
Yeah. Man, there's just so many things. I've been trying to organize my thoughts on just what I would say to someone, and what I have said to people. And I think foundationally, if everything's going great in your life, like, invest yourself in relationships, invest yourself in people that, and not only invest that, but invest your life in other people, because we tend to, hey, how are you? I'm good. How are you? And we don't go much past that.
Stays pretty shallow.
Right. Like we see each other, at worship, we see each other passing in the hallway, and we just assume you're here where you're good. And the only way you're going to do that is in your home, around your own table. So, inviting people to worship with you and be with you is great, but also invite them to your table and be in someone's life. And I think before you're going through adversity, having already invested in others and having those people and relationships are so important. But once you're in it, you have those people to draw you in when you are feeling weak. But also take time in your adversity and in all the craziness to, count your blessings. You hear that, but really, see the good.
Focus
and I
on
had
that.
to challenge myself, at some points, thinking, oh, all these good things have already happened. Now I'm just on this. And I've learned that, yes, be grateful. I've been great. I just say thank you for those gifts, right? But that didn't cancel out any good. And there's so much good. And I would challenge you to sit down and make a list, just write and write and write until you can't write, just all the good. And it'll pour from you.
Sure.
And look for that. But also, I know that Satan's coming for you. He's coming for your marriage. He's coming for your children. He's going to be pushing harder than he ever has because you're weak. No one can go through this, can go through something similar or any other tragedy, and not have weak moments. Yeah. And so, and then there again, relationships come into play.
Sure.
To help you fight that. I mean, I have people literally all over the country that pray for me still. I kind of feel like I'm the eternal person on the prayer list. And I'm so grateful. I get, text, cards, emails, whatever, people just saying we're praying for you still. Yeah. And that's just so powerful. It is a powerful thing. I encourage people to write prayers to each other. Yeah. I had people texting me the prayer that they prayed for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And man, it's one thing to say I'm praying for you. It's another thing to see it.
Yes.
So there's just so many good things that we can do for each other.
Right.
And don't be afraid to say yes. That's when everything hit the fan, I looked at Jay and I said, we're going to need help. Say yes.
Yeah.
So when things are hard and people want to help, say yes.
That's I don't want to run past that point, because we tend to kind of close off and say, no, we can handle it. And from the very beginning, you said, no, we can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was something that I was always in tune with, and just, was wanting to help other people. Like I would see, and that was just something that, that God put in my heart as a spiritual gift, was just to help people.
Yep.
And so I had been on the side where I know they need help and they're like, oh, no, I'm good. And so I'm like, we will not be that.
Yep.
Like, we do need help.
Yeah.
So we just that was kind of our policy, is say yes. And I think that other people, it brought them in. And also, I feel like I was able to, bond with other Christians that, although didn't have a cancer diagnosis, pain is pain.
Yeah, it is.
And so other people in painful situations, it just drew them in. Like I knew they understood her.
There's a bond there.
Right.
Yeah.
And people from it wasn't just people my age. It wasn't,
Right.
So that was just having those people to lean on.
Yeah. I remember one night at church, you were not there. You were in the middle of treatments. And I said to Jay, actually I came up behind someone who had asked him, so how's it going? And he says, terrible.
Yeah.
And that's what you meant. Be vulnerable, be honest. And he said, I'm not going to lie to you. But that's what we do. We try to put on a good face, a good front to make everybody think that, we got this. And it's okay. It's okay to let people in and say, no, I'm not good. It's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes that, like, the Sunday morning after the small talk after church sometimes is an overwhelming time, because so many people do want to ask you.
Yes.
And some people really just want to hear you're doing okay. People don't think, like, when you hear someone's having a scan, you just assume it's okay.
No.
They don't think, like, when they're asking that, there could be another, response.
Right.
That
and the anxiety leading up to
okay.
that scan. Yeah.
In people's face, like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have asked that question. But yeah, not being afraid to just say, like, hey, it's really not that great. Like, because that's real. Yeah. And later down the road, they know who they can come to you, and they know, like, when you're just vulnerable to each other. Right. And that, for me, I couldn't hide the fact, especially, like, right now I can. Like, I don't look sick. I don't look like, no one would think that. But when you're around town with a mask, and at that point I was the only one with a mask, no hair, people know. Right. And so, but at this point, it's not as evident, but that's no different than other people, whether they're going through marital problems, whether they're going through, there's pain,
right.
And you can share it, find someone to share it with. And because that's where we kind of beat Satan. I don't know. Like, that's kind of, I feel like that's the only way I can kind of stick it to Satan, is say, like, no, you will not hold me down.
Right.
I will not pretend like everything's okay all the time. But I don't know. I just challenge people to be honest, be open, and lean on each other. Yeah.
Great advice. That be vulnerable, be weak. That's okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks
this
for having
has
me.
been a great discussion, and I should let our viewers and listeners know that when I'd asked you to come on here, you were all in, and I appreciate it so much. But then last night at church, I said, you're still good and everything. This is one of the few podcasts it's a video podcast. And your response was, shut up.
Are you kidding me? It's
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You didn't know this was going to be video.
Yeah.
And so you were really nervous. And I think our audience would concur. You did a great job and very relaxed. So I appreciate you so much joining us.
Yeah.
And I want to let our viewers and listeners know that if you have a question pertaining to today's podcast, please email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. If you have a question specifically for Ina, then we will get it to her, and I'm sure she'd be glad to answer it and talk with you. If you're somebody that's struggling, you're going through an illness, you're vulnerable, you're weak, and you need some guidance, or maybe just somebody to talk to, then let us know, and we certainly will get you in touch with Ina Beth, and we can make that happen. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here, and thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.